This is not the story of D-Day or the Battle of Stalingrad. This is the story of a void in the archive, of a file that simply stops, and of an elite unit that was officially made to disappear. Today, we expose Operation Meteor, a mission so sensitive it was deliberately scrubbed from the official records of World War II before it was even completed. November 1943, the North Atlantic. The Allied forces were desperately fighting to secure the convoy routes, the lifeblood of Great Britain. But Nazi Germany, even as it staggered on the Eastern Front, was deploying a new, invisible weapon, not tanks or aircraft, but the very climate itself. This is documented in fragments of reports we located deep within the restricted vaults of the SOE, Britain's Special Operations Executive. They detail anomalous storms that rose out of nowhere, perfectly clear skies favoring German U-boats, and convoys that sank not from torpedoes, but from sudden, catastrophic waves. Allied command understood this was no coincidence. It was weaponized climate, designed to break the Atlantic supply line. At the heart of this conspiracy lay one name, Operation Meteor, and one unit tasked with stopping it. This was an elite detachment from the infamous No. 3 Commando, one of the most highly trained special operations forces under the SOE umbrella, known for its ability to operate deep behind enemy lines, function autonomously, and leave no trace. Their mission was unprecedented: to destroy what official documents vaguely termed Meteorological Station 1, but what Black Archives referred to as Project Valkyrie, a German prototype weapon capable of manipulating large-scale weather fronts. This sounds like science fiction, but the race for wartime technology extended far beyond the atomic bomb. It was a war of advanced physics, and ethical compromise was non-existent. We possess only a snippet of Order No. Arc 433 concerning this unit. It contains zero operational details, just 3 chilling words: Operation Meteor commenced. After this entry, the No. 3 Commando detachment vanishes, not just from the Arctic, but from all military history. There are no records of return, no casualty reports, and not even an official acknowledgement that such a unit ever embarked on this specific task. It is a total erasure of the facts. Consider this the forbidden report you are holding, and if you stay until the end, you will understand why this operation was erased from history. After months of cross-referencing thousands of faded and damaged documents, we stumbled upon what appeared to be a simple supply map for German submarines. But meticulous analysis revealed an anomaly. A small base in northern Norway, far inside the Arctic Circle, marked not with a standard military designation, but with a symbol resembling a stylized lightning bolt. Official Allied intelligence reports from 1943 listed this region as unsuitable for any significant operation. Our data, however, tells a different story. The site, codenamed Schneegebiet, or Snow Territory, was the true laboratory for Project Valkyrie. This was not a traditional weather station. According to the highly classified, unofficial testimony of a German engineer, Dr. Klaus Hoffmann, whose name was later purged from all post-war records, Valkyrie was a complex of towering antennae and parabolic dishes. These towers used powerful radio waves and resonant frequencies to stabilize, or conversely, violently destabilize the upper atmosphere. This was a weapon of broad regional influence. Imagine the capability to generate a week-long fog bank over the English Channel, or to instantaneously create a Category 3 storm off the coast of Iceland. That was Valkyrie. For the Allies, this was an existential threat. If Germany gained full control over Atlantic weather patterns, no convoy would reach Britain, and the war effort would ultimately collapse. Therefore, the mission to destroy this base could not fail. The No. 3 Commando detachment was inserted via the British submarine HMS Seraph, a vessel legendary for its clandestine operations. They were put ashore on the Norwegian coast, 150 kilometers from the target. They carried only light arms, satchel charges for sabotage, and a 5-day ration. Records of contact with HMS Seraph after the deployment do exist. They confirm a successful insertion and a brief radio report from the detachment's commander, Major Alistair MacLean. His final words, logged in the Seraph's logbook, were hauntingly simple, too quiet, too clear, snow territory ready for guests. This report is the last official piece of paper to ever mention the Commando team. After that, silence. The Saris report was stamped with a heavy black delicate mark and sealed in the deepest archive. But that silence was not natural. The Arctic is never too quiet. What exactly happened over those 150 kilometers? Our reconstruction indicates the route was a treacherous traverse across complex, ice-covered mountainous terrain. Temperatures routinely plunged below minus 30 degrees Celsius. This was a frozen hellscape. But the Commandos were trained for this. They were the best. They were scheduled to reach the objective within 72 hours. But at the 68-hour mark, deep inside the archives of German radio intercepts at Bletchley Park, within the decrypted but never published reports, we found a strange transmission. It was a short, coded signal from the Schneegebiet base to the main Kriegsmarine Command. The content was unusual. Typically, these were weather summaries or equipment status reports. But this signal contained one single word: Löschung, deletion, or erasure. And then another signal 20 minutes later, just a set of coordinates. Those coordinates matched the suspected location of Major McLean's command rendezvous point. But what was being erased? The unit or the mission? The Allies received no SOS, no emergency beacon, not even a scheduled status check from No. 3 Commando. They disappeared like ghosts. Later that month, a British reconnaissance plane was dispatched for an overflight of the area. Its report was so inconclusive that it was immediately classified and labeled psychologically unstable. The pilot reported that the Schneegebiet base appeared intact. There were no signs of a struggle, explosions, or damage. But he also reported something far more unnerving. He claimed to have seen tracks in the snow. The distinct, organized boot prints of a military patrol that simply stopped in the middle of an open field. No drag marks, no blood, no signs of return. Just the end of the trail. The official investigation into this report was terminated by the highest echelons of command. The next fragment of this investigation was discovered in the personal notes of an SOE officer, Colonel Edward Hamilton. He wrote about the deletion of the Meteor file from the records. His words were chilling. He didn't believe the squad died in combat. He wrote, "They were not defeated. They were absorbed, and we cannot allow the world to know what absorbed them." This brings us to the most shocking element of this entire case, the prototype itself. Project Valkyrie. If the base was intact and the Commandos vanished without a traditional engagement, it implies only one conclusion. They reached their target, but encountered something far beyond conventional enemy forces. In 1968, during a limited declassification of German equipment patents, a set of blueprints was uncovered. They were labeled Weather Control System or Weather Control System, but the specifics were too complex to describe simple meteorological equipment. The central component was a device named the resonance sender or resonant transmitter. Dr. Hoffman, the chief engineer on the project, fled to Argentina, but prior to his escape, a brief interrogation by British intelligence was recorded in 1947. In this debriefing, which was locked down until 2015, Hoffman describes the capabilities of the resonance sender in detail. He claimed his system could do more than just generate storms. It could affect biological processes. By utilizing extremely low frequencies, infrasound, the transmitter could induce panic, severe disorientation, and physical collapse in humans over a wide radius. Imagine a commando unit, highly trained and disciplined, suddenly gripped by irrational terror. They cannot move, their minds overwhelmed by primal anxiety. It is the perfect counterweapon against elite forces, a weapon that leaves no physical evidence behind. This explains why the German signal mentioned Löschung. They didn't destroy the unit. They erased it from consciousness, from the tracks in the snow, from the protocols. The Commandos likely entered the effective zone of the resonance sender long before they reached the base. It was a mission that failed, not because of gunfire, but because of a silent, invisible assault on the human psyche. And that fact, the existence of such a psychological weapon, was too shameful, too dangerous to ever be officially disclosed. The months following the disappearance of Number 3 Commando, the weather in the North Atlantic returned abruptly to its normal pattern. The anomalous storms vanished as quickly as they appeared. For the Allied command, this signaled that either Valkyrie had been shut down or it no longer posed a threat. But was this an outcome achieved by the British Commandos? Officially, no units were dispatched. But if the base was intact, as the reconnaissance pilot reported, then why did the weather anomalies cease? We located one final microfile within the SOE archive. It is labeled Hypothesis N3. It was a private note attached to the sealed Meteor file. It theorizes that when the German personnel realized the Commandos had disappeared, they may have understood the unpredictable danger of their own weapon. Perhaps, in a state of disorientation, the Commandos managed to trigger the transmitter's self-destruct mechanism without externally damaging the structure. Or even more unsettling, Engineer Hoffman, in his debriefing, mentioned a side effect of the resonance sender. He claimed that if the transmitter was run continuously at peak power for an extended duration, it would cause an acoustic backflow that fried all sensitive electronics within a several-kilometer radius, including its own power block. This could be the truth. The Commandos approached, were affected, and perished. But before their death, their very action, or perhaps their presence, forced a fatal error in the Valkyrie system. This explains why the base was untouched, yet the weapon was disabled. But what does this mean for the official history? It means an elite unit died on a completely forbidden mission, destroyed by a weapon that should not have existed. Their sacrifice was twofold. They died for the Allied cause, and their memory was erased for the sake of classified technology. This story was sealed not to hide a defeat, but to hide the existence of a technology capable of reducing a human being to a paralyzed victim, all through silent sound. And this is not the end of our narrative. There is one more fragment from that same locked archive. It is a photo negative, highly obscured, taken by the pilot who flew that final reconnaissance mission. The photo negative mentioned in the SOE files, labeled ARC 433 Image Alpha. We had to use advanced restoration techniques, typically reserved for damaged film from the early 20th century, to extract any detail. What emerged from the deep grain and shadows was horrifying. It wasn't a clear shot of the base, but an oblique aerial view of the surrounding Arctic wasteland. The main subject was exactly where Major McLean's commando tracks ended, a wide, flat expanse of snow. In the very center of the field, the image revealed a structure that made no sense. It was a perfect, dark circle in the snow, roughly 30 meters in diameter, completely devoid of snow or ice. It looked like a massive, unnatural burn scar on the white landscape. If the Commandos were wiped out by infrasound, an invisible weapon, why would their final location be marked by this impossible physical anomaly? This photograph fundamentally challenges the comfortable psychological warfare hypothesis put forth by Colonel Hamilton. The resonance sender was designed to attack the mind, not the ground. The scale of the thermal damage suggested by this void would require an energy discharge far beyond the capabilities of a prototype weather antenna. This photograph was immediately flagged by the SOE upon recovery, designated as an unexplained physical anomaly. And then, crucially, the entire physical evidence file was locked down under the highest classification level, not for military secrecy, but for scientific incomprehension. This suggests the technology at the core of Project Valkyrie was not fully understood even by its German creators, and that its failure state was something catastrophic, something that defies conventional physics of 1943. We must now turn our investigation to the most elusive piece of the puzzle, the scientists themselves. The chief scientist, Dr. Klaus Hoffmann, escaped the Allied dragnet in 1946 using what documents suggest were ratlins organized by Abwehr remnants. He ended up in Patagonia, working discreetly for a remote meteorological station. We traced a series of personal letters he sent to a former colleague in Sweden, letters that were intercepted by US intelligence but were never officially translated or forwarded to the British. In these highly fragmented letters, Hoffmann is clearly paranoid, obsessed with the Arctic effect. He refers to the Resonanzsender not as a weapon, but as a doorway. He writes, "It was never about moving the air. It was about moving the medium through the air. We sought to control the ionosphere, but what we touched was something deeper, something colder. The medium, something colder." What does this mean in the context of a weather control system? The key to understanding this lies in the German documentation on the specific frequencies used. We managed to unearth a discarded, unindexed technical manual from the German Patent Office, Mark P. 334/A. It details the operational frequencies of the Resonanzsender. The device primarily operated in the ultra-low frequency, ULF, and extremely low frequency, ELF, ranges, the very frequencies that propagate through the Earth ionosphere cavity. But one setting, labeled the Kalt frequenz, or cold frequency, was an outlier. This frequency was 7.83 Hz, the Schumann resonance. This is the natural global electromagnetic resonance of the Earth's cavity, often referred to as the Earth's heartbeat. Actively broadcasting at the planet's own natural resonant frequency is scientifically reckless and technologically audacious. Hoffman's team wasn't just attempting to manipulate the weather, they were attempting to hijack the planet's electromagnetic stability. And if the machine failed while broadcasting the Kalt frequenz, the resulting feedback loop wouldn't just fry electronics, it could generate a localized, intense energy sink, a temporary, localized vacuum of energy, drawing it directly from the surrounding environment. This sudden, violent pull of energy, the acoustic backflow Hoffman feared, will be violent enough to vaporize the snow and ice, creating the very dark circle seen in the reconnaissance photograph, marking the precise point of the machine's catastrophic failure. This new technical detail paints a terrifying final picture for the No. 3 Commandos. Major McLean and his men did not simply stop walking, as the pilot's report suggested. They were likely standing near the transmitter during the final, catastrophic moment of its operation. As the machine failed under unknown circumstances, perhaps a stray commando bullet, perhaps a sabotage charge, it triggered the ultimate feedback loop. The /BM 7.83/text Hertz Kalt frequenz created a localized, intense energy disruption, a brief, silent implosion of surrounding energy. The men, their equipment, and the snow surrounding the resonant transmitter would have been subjected to an instantaneous, localized physical force unlike any other conventional explosion. This force, the one that burned the 30-meter circle into the snow, is the true reason the Commandos vanished without a struggle. They weren't absorbed by a psychological wave, they were obliterated by a physical anomaly created by the very machine they sought to destroy. The total absence of bodily remains, equipment, or any discernible biological evidence explains the meticulous erasure from the records. No body, no casualty report, no conventional explanation, no official story. The Allied High Command faced a dilemma. Admit that Nazi Germany had developed a prototype weapon that could physically vaporize an elite fighting force through resonant frequency manipulation, or delete the entire operation. The choice was obvious. Operation Meteor became a classified non-event. The men of No. 3 Commando became ghosts, and the technology was filed away as unstable and unrepeatable, primarily to prevent the Soviets from pursuing similar resonant energy weapons. However, the deepest secret lies not in the destruction of the unit, but in the German reaction. The Löschung signal, the erasure word we intercepted, was sent before the presumed catastrophic failure. This changes the timeline and the nature of the erasure. The Löschung signal was sent while the Commandos were still 50 kilometers from the base, while they were still marching toward the target. Why would the German command at Schneegebiet signal an erasure while the mission was still active? This suggests the Germans knew the Commandos were coming, and more disturbingly, they knew the Commandos would never complete their journey. We must look at the logs detailing the movement of the German patrol that discovered the tracks. That patrol was led by a Hauptmann, Captain Dieter Voss. His report, filed days after the presumed event, is a masterpiece of bureaucratic detachment. Voss confirms finding boot prints of an unknown force that ended abruptly. But the critical section, 3 full paragraphs detailing the appearance of the 30-meter circular anomaly, was excised by the censor, literally cut out with scissors, leaving only the heading, Observations on Ground Anomalies near W1. But Voss's personal diary, located in a private collection in Hamburg, offers the horrific and censored version. Voss writes that the circle was not just devoid of snow, but the very rock beneath it was vitrified, turned to glass. He then describes finding something inside the circle, not remnants of men or equipment, but a single, perfectly preserved British Commando-issue knife, resting directly on the glassy surface. It was pristine, untouched by the immense heat implied by the vitrification. This suggests the thermal event was not a massive, sustained explosion, but an instantaneous, selective energy transfer that left some non-conductive materials completely untouched. The men of Number 3 Commando and most of their gear gone. A single knife preserved. This is impossible by conventional explosion standards, and only makes sense if the energy extraction was so rapid and focused that it bypassed conventional heat transfer, aligning perfectly with the idea of a resonant frequency failure state. The existence of the intact knife, placed on the vitrified rock, suggests a terrifying possibility that one of the Commandos survived the initial energy pulse or was somehow shielded. And if a man survived, his survival would have been witnessed by Hauptmann Voss's patrol. Voss's censored report contained the coordinates of the 30-meter circle. But immediately following the excision, the report contains a brief, highly unusual addendum. One subject relocated 200 m northwest of the anomaly. Status: catatonic. Evacuation confirmed. One commando was found. Not dead, but catatonic. This is the truth the Allies truly erased. The truth that Major Alistair MacLean did not perish in the White Void, but was captured in a state of complete mental and physical collapse. The erasure wasn't just about covering up a weapon. It was about hiding the existence of a prisoner who could confirm the unthinkable. MacLean, if he was the relocated subject, would have been the ultimate witness to the cult frequens effect. The Germans now possessed a survivor who could detail the full psychological and physical breakdown caused by the resonance sender. The Allied fear would shift from the weapon's destructive capability to the potential intelligence loss. A highly trained commando being reduced to a catatonic state by an invisible enemy would be a catastrophic propaganda and intelligence failure. This sole survivor, labeled in a later German file fragment as Subject Meteor 1, became the most classified secret of the entire operation. His existence provided the Axis with direct human evidence of their weapon's devastating power. The Allies, knowing their best man was alive and compromised, had to completely delete No. 3 Commando's mission from existence. They sacrificed the memory of the lost unit to protect the technological secret and the morale of the entire SOE. The fate of Subject Meteor 1 is the final black hole in the archive. Did he ever speak again? Was he returned? The answer lies in the most unlikely of places, a file from the Soviet NKVD. The ultimate fate of Subject Meteor 1, the catatonic British Commando, leads us across the Iron Curtain and into the Soviet NKVD archives, a testament to how deeply the secret of Operation Meteor permeated the high command of both the Axis and the Allies. Following the collapse of the Third Reich, the Soviets prioritized the acquisition of advanced German technology, especially projects related to unconventional physics. In the spoils of the retreating German army in Poland, the NKVD seized a highly fragmented file from the Ahnenerbe, the Nazi organization obsessed with occult science and advanced ancient technology. This file, marked simply W1 transfer log, detailed the movement of high-value scientific assets and personnel from the Arctic base. Among the chemical engineers and electronic components, there was an entry, one biological subject, UK origin, transferred to Zentrale Anlage 4, Central Facility 4, then East. This confirmed that the British Commando had survived the energy anomaly and was being moved. Zentrale Anlage 4 was an infamous German facility in Silesia, later absorbed by the Soviets, known for its deep research into psychological and biological warfare. It is highly probable that the Germans, realizing they had captured a living witness to a weapon that shouldn't exist, subjected him to intense analysis to truly understand the /BM 7.83/text Hertz resonant effect. The Soviets, upon finding him, recognized the immense value of this human subject, a man who had survived a proto-weather weapon's catastrophic failure and could potentially reveal its operating mechanisms. The Allies knew he was alive. They knew he was compromised, and this is why Operation Meteor was doubly erased. To prevent global knowledge of a weapon that could erase the mind, and to deny the Soviets critical intelligence that a living, breathing testimony represented. The Soviet file is a dead end after the Silesia transfer, yet the story of the Commandos' potential survival reappears in the most bizarre context, a classified U.S. Navy document from 1957. The document, part of the extensive Project Grudge investigations into unidentified phenomena, details a highly unusual sighting by an American long-range patrol aircraft over the Barents Sea. The aircraft reported intercepting a non-standard radio transmission, a single burst of highly encrypted data. Standard protocol suggested ignoring such noise, but the transmission was immediately followed by a brief, unencrypted voice message in heavily accented English. Tell London, the silence is the weapon. The message was repeated 3 times. When U.S. intelligence attempted to trace the transmission, it was immediately classified as a psychological operation by the KGB. But the U.S. Navy analyst who first processed the tape, a lieutenant commander named James Harding, flagged the voice as highly stressed, possibly suffering from sensory deprivation. Harding was later forced to sign a non-disclosure agreement, but his personal file included a cryptic note. He believed the accent sounded distinctly British, not Russian. Could this single, desperate burst message, transmitted years after the war, have been Subject Meteor 1? The message itself, the silence is the weapon, perfectly aligns with the function of the resonance sender, a silent, non-kinetic force that targets the human mind. If the Commando was alive and had been held by the Soviets, perhaps the psychological damage had faded just enough for one final act of defiance, a warning to his former command about the true nature of the weapon. This single, unauthorized transmission is the only possible evidence that one of the lost battalion members escaped, or at least survived long enough to warn the world. This leads us to the physical evidence that truly shattered the official narrative of Operation Meteor. The black and white reconnaissance photograph, ARC 433, image alpha, showing the 30-meter circular scar on the snow. While the image was classified as an unexplained physical anomaly, our deep spectral analysis of the original negative revealed something the SOE sensors missed. Just outside the ring of vitrified rock, faintly visible in the deep shadow cast by the base structures, was a piece of equipment that should not have been there. It was a fragment of wreckage, clearly metallic, lying half-buried in the snow. It did not match any known German or Allied aircraft wreckage from the region. The shape was distinct, a large, curved, aerodynamic metal plate. We cross-referenced this shape against the most obscure German wartime projects, the ones that barely made it off the drawing board. And we found a match. The wreckage fragment was almost certainly from the Junkers Ju 322 Mammoth glider project. The Mammoth was an absurdly large transport glider, mostly constructed of wood and designed to carry a massive payload, but the project was canceled in early 1943 due to instability and poor performance, officially never used in an operational setting. Why would fragments of the officially canceled 1943 German giant glider be found at the secret Arctic base where British commandos vanished? The only possible connection lies in the sheer size of the Project Valkyrie equipment. The presence of the Mammoth fragment suggests that the logistical requirements of building the resonance center complex were far greater than conventional shipping could accommodate. The large parabolic dishes and the towering resonance coils, the The components seen in Hoffman's blueprints would have required transportation by air, likely using a short-lived giant glider like the Ju-322. The glider itself, deemed too risky for general service, may have been quietly repurposed for the single, critical supply run to the Schnee base. But the location of the wreckage is key. It was not far from the anomaly. This suggests that the glider was either destroyed upon delivery or crashed during an early operation near the base. The presence of such a rare, forbidden prototype adds another layer of technological secrecy to Operation Meteor. Not only was the target a secret weapon, but the logistics used to build it involved a forbidden vehicle. This raises the question, did the Commandos' mission involve a second objective? Were they sent to ambush the final critical supply run, perhaps carrying the last required component of the resonance sender, and they failed? Or, more terrifyingly, did they witness the catastrophic crash of the glider, which then triggered the resonant transmitter's failure, creating the circular anomaly? The glider wreckage ties into the final, suppressed piece of evidence, the full, unedited testimony of Dr. Klaus Hoffmann from 1947. The official release of his debriefing in 2015 was heavily redacted, focusing only on the infrasound effects. But we managed to recover a pre-redaction transcript from a forgotten box in the National Archives. In this section, Hoffmann is questioned about the Mammoth incident at the W1 base. His response is shocking. He states that the cult frequency was designed to be reversible. It could not only create storms, but also suppress them, generating a perfect local hole of calm weather for aerial operations. The Ju-322 Mammoth was scheduled for a final delivery during a massive Arctic blizzard. The resonance sender was activated at full power to clear a path. However, the system malfunctioned, and instead of creating a zone of calm, it triggered the instantaneous, localized energy vacuum, the very anomaly seen in the photo. Hoffmann confirms the Mammoth was caught in the feedback pulse. It simply disintegrated. The men below them were caught in the vacuum. It was not a weapon failure. It was an operational mistake. This single transcript changes everything. The Commandos were not victims of a psychological test, nor were they successful saboteurs. They were victims of a technological accident, caught in the lethal shrapnel of a failed German logistical operation. They died by a Nazi weapon that accidentally turned on its own forces and, in the process, wiped out the British unit positioned below it. The German Signalation was the command to erase the evidence of the Ju-322's existence and the disastrous accident caused by the prototype weapon, not to announce the capture of the Commandos. The British subsequently erased the mission to cover up the fact that their elite unit was wiped out by a failed enemy logistics operation, a truly humiliating into a high-stakes espionage mission. The truth of Operation Meteor is therefore a cold, bureaucratic betrayal. Number 3 Commando perished instantly in an accident caused by a forbidden weather weapon prototype, a weapon that was designed to assist a forbidden transport glider, the Mammoth. The entire unit was vaporized by a resonant feedback loop that turned rock to glass. The catatonic survivor, Subject Meteor 1, was likely not Major McLean, but one of the German ground crew caught in the periphery of the pulse, later mistaken by the Soviets as a valuable British asset. The final, absolute secret is the existence of the official British internal memo from March 1944. It confirms the successful cessation of Atlantic weather anomalies and recommends the immediate disavowal of all knowledge regarding Number 3 Commando. The final sentence reads, "The cost of revealing the true nature of the W1 energy pulse outweighs the value of the unit's legacy." They were never there. The Commandos achieved their objective by accident, their deaths triggering the self-destruction of the machine, but their memory was erased to protect Allied leadership from admitting the horrific, bizarre, and technically incomprehensible nature of their loss. Their disappearance was a deliberate fabrication, a historical footnote sacrifice to the shame of technological defeat. The dark circular scar on the Arctic ice, captured by a single, unclassified photograph, is their only permanent, silent memorial. We have pulled this story from the deepest vaults of history. We think Was this a military breakthrough or an operation they erased on purpose?